The pioneering legacy of Pope John Paul II was one in which Islam was accepted and embraced as an Abrahamic faith, and the record that Pope John Paul set forth was one that was promoting a dialogue of civilizations and was intent on mutual understanding. It belies a fundamental misunderstanding of the early days of Islam, and the very notion that Islam was spread by the sword is a canard that is frequently repeated and is false. Look, on the international scene, there have been frequent, incessant condemnations of terrorism.
Tell me one Islamic government leader beside Musharraf who they want to kill.
Musharraf has, Mubarak has. These things have happened. I know that they're inadequate. I completely agree with you.
Okay.
But we cannot put moderate Muslims on the sidelines and be waiting for Muslim governments
Is it because
to
they're
respond,
afraid to get killed? Is it because they're afraid to get killed that the moderate Muslims don't speak louder? Is that the reason?
No, it's because they're not receiving the international platforms of the heads of Muslim countries. It's the responsibility of Western nations to be able to respect the voices of moderate Muslims and to understand that they are part of the solution.
So you don't think in Pakistan or in Saudi Arabia?
No, we are not afraid to speak out. That we are not afraid to speak out. We're doing it on a daily basis. We know that that is our responsibility, not to America only, but to our faith and to our understanding of how we can create a better future.
Where are all the moderate Muslims? Why don't they speak out as vociferously against acts of terrorism and brutal violence within the Muslim community as they do, let's say, against, as Robert said, the Pope's comments?
Yeah, but Laura, the reality is that the moderate Muslims are standing up. They are jumping up and down screaming against terrorism. They are in mosques. They are in community centers.
We need to hear them outside of mosques.
And you're absolutely right. We do need to hear them. And the fact is that the media needs to search out those voices rather than claiming that, as Robert Spencer does, that any so-called moderate, the only good moderate or the only good Muslim is a former Muslim. The kinds of accusations that are placed even against moderate Muslims who are doing the hard work inside of their mosques in order to promote the true message of Islam, which is one that upholds peace, justice, mutual understanding, equality, mercy. These are the teachings that Islam teaches.
You don't often hear Muslims in the United States condemning, again, vociferously, loudly on television, on radio, what's happening in Saudi Arabia.
If we paid more attention to the authentic discourse that is taking place every day within the mainstream American Muslim community, you would see that. But instead, when we turn our cameras towards those people who are jumping up and down in the streets, of course we're not going to hear them. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, you know, it's the age-old thing.
But Madina, you are a moderate Muslim voice, and you are speaking out, and I applaud that. I think it's amazing. I try to showcase as many Muslims speaking out against this on my own show as I can find, and believe me, sometimes it's hard to find them, but I do find them.
One thing that
Muhammad himself taught that unbelievers should be offered conversion or subjugation or war. Those are the only choices.
That is false. That is absolutely false.
Well,
unfortunately, it's true.
Understanding and inclusion. No, and you have to look at the Quran. I am reading the Quran, Robert.
Chapter 9, verse 29. Chapter 9, verse 29. And your only solution to this problem seems to be to drive
all Muslims into the ocean.
Well, that's certainly not.
I've never said anything like that.
Good evening. I just wanted to say thank you for coming to campus tonight and presenting your point of view. It's always valuable to have two sets of views going on at the same time. Very useful. My name is Jumana Imad Musa Ahmed al-Bahri, and I'm a student here at UCSD. I was reading your literature. I found that much more interesting than the talk. And I found some interesting things about the MSA, which is an organization that's very active on campus, and it is hosting our annual Hitler Youth Week. You should come out to those events. If you could clarify the connection between the MSA and jihad terrorist networks, because last I checked, we had to do our own fundraising, and we never get help from anyone. So if you could clarify the connection between UCSD's MSA, or if you don't have such information, if you could connect other MSAs on UC's, because the connection wasn't too clear in the pamphlet. Just if you could clarify.
Okay. Will you condemn Hamas here and now?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas
Would I condemn Hamas?
as a terrorist genocidal organization?
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. The main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood network as revealed in the documents.
I don't think you understood what I meant by that. I meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security. So if you could please just answer my question.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will arrest you.
If I support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I look really bad.
If you won't condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. Case closed. I have had this experience, I had this experience at UC Santa Barbara where there were 50 members of the Muslim Students Association sitting right in the rows there. And throughout my hour talk, I kept asking them, will you condemn Hezbollah and Hamas? And none of them would. And then when the question period came, the president of the Muslim Students Association was the first person to ask questions. And I said, before you start, will you condemn Hezbollah? And he said, well, that question is too complicated for a yes-no answer. So I said, okay, I'll put it to you this way. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and showing everybody what's here. And you're wearing a terrorist neckerchief.
If you understood...
You didn't hear the lady.
Could you please answer my question?
You don't get to make a speech. Yes, sir.
The Pew Research Center reports on a new poll that as many as 1 in 4 young American Muslims condone suicide bombings against civilians. Where is the sort of modern Muslim element that would try to close this sort of thing down?
Well, they're right beneath our noses. If we look to the headline of the survey, what it points to is Muslim Americans, mostly mainstream, middle class, moderate, sharing American ideals and believing that hard work pays off in this country. That's the headline on this story. When we look at the statistic about suicide bombing, it is indeed a disturbing one, but taken out of context, it's even more frightening. Now, when it comes to the Muslim American community, Mr. Emerson has it all wrong.
I think you still have to.
Our condemnations of al-Qaeda, of suicide bombing, of terrorism are on record, they're unequivocal, and that is the story of the mainstream Muslim community. We need to recognize and reinforce the mainstream rather than doing so with the marginal elements that we're all seeking to.
So, Adina, I have no doubt that you are right. The majority of Muslims living in the United States are moderates and peaceful. I don't doubt that.
I'll tell you exactly what we're doing about it. I respond to it with abject horror, just as you do and just as all Americans do. And it is not representative of the mainstream Muslim community. 5% is a reality that we have to deal with. But getting back to the other questions, what are we doing about it? Nobody is working harder to fight terrorism and extremism than the Muslim American community. We work with all levels of law enforcement. We work with our communities. We have a national grassroots campaign to fight terrorism that Mr. Emerson is well aware of, that is working with communities directly to ensure that extremism doesn't creep into our mosques and our community centers. The FBI knows it, the Department of Justice knows it, and why folks like Mr. Emerson can't recognize that is a puzzle to me because it's being recognized out there. We have to get Muslims to be part of the solution, and we do
All right,
that
let me let
by
Steve-
recognizing their legitimate
respond.
efforts.
Response.
Listen, let me read to you just 3 different points here. And number 3, this is something that Ms. Adina Lekovic should be very familiar with. When we hear someone refer to the great Mujahid, Osama bin Laden, as a terrorist, we should defend our brother and refer to him as a freedom fighter, someone who has forsaken wealth and power to fight in Allah's cause and speak out against oppressors. This statement was made after the '98 bombing, and this was made in Al Talib magazine.
Absurd.
And that was Adina's. She was editor of the Al Talib magazine when the statement was made.
No, I was not. These are lies.
That's
and
not
that
a
is
lie. You were
no,
an
these
editor.
are absolute mischaracterizations.
No, you were managing
Mr.
editor
Emerson,
of the
your
newspaper.
Your research is sloppy. Your
No,
research
were you not
is
a
sloppy.
managing editor of the newspaper?
No, I was not.
You were not?
For your research.
You were not on the byline as a managing editor?
For your research to point out and to conduct this kind of character assassination is quite ridiculous.
Adina, were you a managing editor?
What we're talking about here.
Adina, were you a managing editor of Al Talib magazine?
I was a student at UCLA, and I was the editor of the Daily Bruin.
All right, we're going to have to leave.
So that was the campus.
I will bid you assalamu alaikum, because that is what my faith teaches me, and that, regardless of who is in the pulpit, is what the book teaches. Saying that Islam is dominated by radicals is much like saying, is as absurd as saying that America is dominated by murderers. Certainly, they exist within our society, and certainly radicals exist within the fold of Islam. But do they dominate? Absolutely not. Based on the polling data that Reza shared with you, and based on so much other data that exists out there. Now, Islam is dominated, if you will, by scholars, by average people more so than anyone else, and who want nothing more than to be understood and to be respected, as that same poll showed over and over again. To point to Saudi Arabia over and over again, I will hand that to the other side. Saudi Arabia is by no means the shining glory of any part of the Muslim world. But pointing to pockets in no way reflects the overall picture, the overall reality. Looking in a pocket, or in many pockets, in no way represents the overall costume, the overall character of the people. Internationally recognized leaders are calling for integration, for tolerance. And their reach is 10 times wider, at least, than that of Al-Qaeda or any of their associates. Just consider those, even in Turkey, which has recently elected a new government, but has taken the lead in ushering in a historic re-examining of Islamic material to cater to the contemporary world. That is just one among countless examples of people who are working day in, day out to re-emerge as the dominant force within their faith, and who are crying out for attention on the world stage. In the war of ideas, the moderates are the ones who have regained the ground since 9/11, both in internationally recognized leaders and in the feelings and the sentiments of the people on the ground. And it is those people on the ground, 1.3 billion of them, who dominate and define the religion of Islam, as do their recognized religious leaders who are, as we mentioned time and again, pushing for a new form of tolerance and more and greater dialogue with other religious institutions as well as state powers. The people on the ground who make up the dominant force within Islam and who have wrestled back control over their faith and are continuing to do so. In no way do I place any sort of validity or endorsement on the Saudi ideology. Is it out there? Are there Qur'ans out there that we find problems with? Absolutely. But even the Saudi people would disagree in large part with what their government is doing, and there is no foundation whatsoever for the kinds of distorted perceptions of faith that they're spreading on the ground. And that in no way represents the global reality of Islam. Again, looking at pockets and trying to turn them into global realities, we have to recognize and reinforce the majority. So that is, and that's precisely what has happened since 9/11, which is the point that I was trying to make. That's where the re-emergence is taking place.
Well, the Cordoba House Mosque is a bold effort by Muslim New Yorkers to reject the kind of extreme, violent and sick vision of Islam that drove the 9/11 hijackers. This place, this center, is intended to be a place that promotes interreligious understanding and respect, in direct opposition, again, to that sick and twisted vision that we're all opposed to. I think this project should move forward, and I think that it's an emblem that rejects a violent vision of Islam and replaces it with one that's a peaceful one that's fueled by coexistence. And I think that's precisely the right kind of message that can live at near ground zero and show the world and New Yorkers that that Muslims fully and completely reject what took place on 9/11 as being a counter to our teachings and to our core values.
You're not going to believe what you're about to see. University of Central Florida, a taxpayer-funded university, sponsoring terrorist-sympathizing groups, stifling free speech, Islamic indoctrination is occurring all over this nation. Here is just one example.
My question is a legal one, and I bring it up, and I have a copy. I know that that Mr. Badawi sits on the Fiqh Council of North America, and we've heard a lot here today about different laws, things in the Quran, not in the Quran. The Reliance was translated in 1991. It is accepted by the Fiqh Council of Jeddah and the Fiqh Council of North America, as well as Al-Azhar University, the Grand Mufti of Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and it's accepted by all 4 schools of Sunni Islamic law and both of Shia. It talks about in the Book of Justice about stoning, Book O12:2. It talks about the killing of apostates. It talks about the killing of those who leave the apostates that leave the religion and non-Muslims. This is accepted authoritative Islamic law, and if it is authoritative Islamic law, you sit on the council that has a stamp of approval inside it. The Fiqh Council of North America has approved this book. Will you either deny Islamic law or will you denounce Islamic law? One of the two, please.
Neither. First of all, aside from the Quran and Sunnah, there is a whole range of interpretation. Just sit and relax. There are many verses in the Quran that affirm freedom of belief.
Yes, sir, I'm listening.
Several, not one. Some of them have been mentioned already. There are 3 or 4 versions in Sahih Muslim and also in Bukhari. In Bukhari.
But sir, if you're going to be deceptive, you're going to answer honestly. This book has scholarly consensus or ijma. It does, excuse me, has scholarly consensus, sir. This book does. Step out of the room. Step out of the room, please. Step out of the room. Thank you.
I just want to say that that was unfortunate. I don't think that person needed to be taken. Yeah, I don't think that person needed to be taken from the room. We should be able to have discourse, hopefully not heated, but open discourse. Like this is what the point of a day like this is supposed to be about. So I hope that we get a further opportunity to talk to that person.
I just like to make a quick comment.
Okay, here.
I just want to make a quick comment. If you disagree, I think what we just saw here recently actually is that very apropos to the whole discourse we've been having. And if you disagree, if somehow you object or you have a strong and valid point, You end up being drugged out.
Well, we explained the rules of engagement.
I'm not talking
in
to
the
you, sir. I'm
beginning.
talking to the panel.
Well,
See, this is exactly, once again, I was being very calm, very polite, and he's trying to shut me down.
I'm not trying. I'm just explaining the rules to you, sir.
I'm just saying I think this is a prime example.
Not only were my First Amendment rights violated, but what you just witnessed was not a dialogue, but a monologue and Islamic propaganda. The mantra of the event was the bashing of Christianity and the promotion of Islamophobia. The Islamic groups and UCF worked together to control any questions that were critical of Islam. Others in attendance were also cut off, silenced, and ordered to leave. Our university should be a place of open, honest dialogue and education, not indoctrination.
Remove me! Remove me!
You're embarrassing yourself.
I can embarrass myself all I want. I will stand here and I will heckle. My only purpose today is that this event is shut down. My only purpose today is that this event is shut down. You have turned Palestine into a land of prostitutes, rapists, and child molesters.
Come on, here's my faculty
So if I show it to you and...
I'm going to take you before the faculty senate for disrupting the
You know what? Wait.
That's harassment.
That's not the harassment. It's for you to be able to disrupt this.
They might leave, but I ain't. I will stand here and I will heckle you until you leave. What are you doing? Yeah?
You're still doing it, and we're really
Go ahead. You know what?
Stay and listen.
Sounds great. How many women have you raped? How many children have you raped?
My God, this is so
You are a child molester. Let the cops arrest me. Let the cops arrest me. Officer, please arrest me. Arrest me. I would love to be arrested.
Adina, you were here with us recently. We're so glad to have you back. It was interesting. We listened to some sound from someone from the Council on American Islamic Relations talking about the fact, while this is good news, in the Muslim faith, it is not part of their faith, your faith, to dance on the grave of anyone, even a mass murderer like Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, that's certainly true. But, you know, on a day like this, let me just say that it would be dishonest to say that I'm anything less than filled with a huge sense of relief and a huge sense of gratitude. I think that President Obama and the National Security Team and the Navy SEALs, by eliminating Osama bin Laden, have done a victory for America and a victory for Muslims worldwide, frankly, because bin Laden and Al-Qaeda have represented a perverted vision of our faith. They have been more of a disgrace to our faith than any other single factor out there, and the reality of what Muslims worldwide want is being reflected in the Arab Spring today.
We did hear the response from Hamas in Gaza, where they're almost making bin Laden into a martyr. Do you think there is a significant group of Muslims around the world who will believe that he is a martyr?
Hamas is an isolated minority, and we shouldn't look at it as anything more than that. They are a pocket that exists, and I think that the violence that Hamas has been using is also on its way out.
Adina Lekovic from the Muslim Public Affairs Council here in Los Angeles. We so appreciate when you lend your voice to our broadcast. Thanks so much for making time for us again today.
It's my pleasure, anytime.